I've been a practicing school psychologist for over a decade. I've worked in many public school environments and with every age group served by schools. And no matter where I've worked, and regardless of the fact that I've pretty much consistently worked with the most dutiful, determined, skilled, and selfless people, I have found that across the board we are struggling to meet the needs of every person in the building. And this was only exacerbated after COVID. So a couple years ago, I felt such grief and remorse about this that I started to look for new work. But one night, everything changed when I finally learned about the inherited model of our school system. And what I learned transformed my grief and my overwhelm into unambiguous outrage at first. But eventually I cooled down. And when I did, I had this newfound sense of clarity about the obstacles that we face in schools. And armed with that clarity, I had to therefore join the growing movement of people already doing the important work to transform our public education model for the benefit of all. So this is what I learned that night. The persisting public education model we inherited was designed by a highly militarized autocratic state, the Kingdom of Prussia. And it was crafted to condition people into obedience and into compliance for a military and labor force. This centuries-old model overwhelmingly endures today in the form of age-segregated classrooms, overburdened and rigid schedules, compulsory attendance, and standardized testing, in addition to many other lasting design features, both overt and subtle. Now, as a school psychologist, it's my job to understand the necessary conditions for learning and what theory and neuroscience and my personal experience as an educator and mother of two all agree upon is this. For real, lasting learning to happen, safety and connection must be felt. Now, safety and connection might look different for different people, but they are universal biological human needs and non-negotiable precursors to all deep learning. And herein lies the problem, because safety and connection are incongruent with obedience and compliance. And thinking about our use of space, our use of language, our relationships with one another, our relationship with time and the clock, cultivating these two conflicting experiences is vastly different for children and adults alike. So, in other words, our model, organized around conformity and obedience, is fundamentally misaligned with what children need in order to learn and thrive: safety and connection. And it certainly bears saying this is disproportionately true for groups who have been historically and who continue to be marginalized by our systems. So, big picture, our system doesn't do what we want it or need it to do, which is to enable children to learn and thrive. Now, thought experiment. If we had a computer program and the computer program wasn't working as intended, what would we do? We'd find the bug and fix it. Today, with the benefit of historical insight and our knowledge of the human brain, we know where the bug in our metaphorical programming lies. Therefore, today is about cultivating an appetite and shoring up our courage to do the work to fix the bug. I'd like to ground some of this in my own story. When I was 7, I moved into a school with this bewildering posse of 7-year-olds who already functioned like a well-oiled bowling machine. And that posse set their sights on me. Adults tried to intervene, but nothing really changed the behavior of my classmates, and it persisted for a long time. Now, I was angry about all this for years. But when I finally learned about the history, origin, legacy of our inherited model, my experience, my perspective, it shifted, because I realized the bullying wasn't about me. Bullying is just a predictable outcome of a system organized around conformity and competition and hierarchy and obedience. And in the light of this truth, my anger dissolved into forgiveness. And I am so deeply curious about what could happen if more of us reflected upon our educational journeys in the context of this history. What kind of healing could happen? What kind of insights could we bring forward? How could we change? Because this history, it offered me a pathway toward greater inner peace. And if that weren't enough, it has activated a sense of purpose and drive in my life's work. Where before I felt defeated, today, I feel energized. Energized! And here's why. Because today, I understand the shortcomings of public education. They aren't about the educators. They aren't about the children. They aren't about their families or their communities. No. The failures have always been, first and foremost, about a model that fails to center the people within it. And that is something we can work with. And something we ought to. Because children and public education matter. When I looked back at my school experience through this newly gained historical lens, a theme, which had been previously invisible to me, emerged. I had regularly sought the refuge I found in teamwork, because they were crucial incubators to my sense of safety and connection. From soccer to basketball to theater to newspaper, I had inadvertently, yet repeatedly, sought sanctuary in spaces where I could work within a team toward a common goal. And through this effort and this struggle, some genuine relationships formed. Why? Because teams do what our existing model is hard tasked to do. They enable relationships by virtue of their very design. Because when a group of people come together and we work toward a common aim, one which we all care about, there are countless rich, uncontrived opportunities for people to connect, for relationships to form between people, relationships within oneself to oneself. Relationships. They are humanity's medicine because they are the bridge to safety and connection. And in the face of the urgent societal and global needs we face today, they are more important than ever. We can and we should be leveraging them in the design of our schools. There are schools doing just this already. There are project-based approaches where children are learning beyond the walls of their classrooms in the communities where they live to solve real-world problems intergenerationally. There are schools harnessing the power of artificial intelligence to center a child's interest, a student's interest in their own learning journeys, instead of holding steadfast to a prescribed curriculum for all. There are schools using restorative justice in their classrooms, schools teaching mindfulness practices. There are schools using sociocratic and collective learning journeys. Today, there are public schools based upon the Waldorf approach and public schools based upon the Montessori approach, both of which center people and relationships in their design. We need not reinvent the wheel. The systemic solutions we seek are within reach. And the more of us reflecting upon our own educational journeys in the context of this history, the more rapidly and boldly we will reach for those solutions. I would just say, for those of you who feel called to share about your journey and start talking about this, do so with compassion and without blame. I've done a lot of straw polls, and I don't think any more than 5% of educators or the general public have any awareness of our system's autocratic roots. There is a gaping hole in our collective knowledge of this, which is precisely why knowing it and sharing it holds untold potential. Nelson Mandela once said that education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. Now, education is not a weapon. It is a sophisticated tool for developing the human mind. But he was right about the potential of schools. After all, we are the custodians of the human brain, arguably the most advanced technology on Earth. And if we can align our public education model to work with the brain's ancient relational needs, we can do more than mend the tears in our societal fabric. We can propulsively build a world that is safe and just and beautiful and one worthy of our children. We can change schools and change the world. The solutions we seek are within our grasp. And regardless of which solution or solutions we reach for and work toward, as long as we birth a public education model that centers the humans within it, by weaving relationships into learning with self, relationship with others, relationships with communities beyond the walls of schools, with our history and with our land, we will succeed in fixing the bug in our inherited model, because safety and connection, those crucial ingredients to learning, they follow relationships. This is how we unlock the genius of the human brain in our schools. This is how we call forth the still dormant visionaries, thinkers, leaders, collaborators, and creators of tomorrow. This is how we form our team for our children, for their future, and for our world. Thank you.